What Disney is doing wrong, and what Universal Studios is doing right, is the talk of theme park fandom. For every mistake and misjudgment of public taste that Disney makes, Universal seems to respond with exactly what the public wants. Ironically, much of that has just been catch up. The best of what Universal is doing today is catching up to what Disney already did 20 years ago. I mean, I will die on the hill that Tokyo Disney Sea is technically the best theme park in the world, and Universal hasn't even come close to it yet. But their most direct competition is Walt Disney World in Florida, and on August 1st, 2019, Universal Studios blew the mind of the theme park fandom with the announcement of a third Orlando park, Epic Universe. Details have been sparse on the park, leaving plenty of room for speculation. Super Nintendo Land was the big announcement, a theme park based on Nintendo's Mario franchise. However, concept art and leaked patents have all but officially revealed lands based on Wizarding World of Harry Potter, How to Train Your Dragon, and most relevant to me, Universal Monsters. But just as exciting as a Universal Monsters theme park might seem on the surface, these same rumors and leaks paint a picture of a park that is already failing the monsters before it has even been built. Now, my wife and I have been to both Universal resorts in the United States, and came away with more than a few critiques. For one, Universal is heavily reliant on highly specialized intellectual property that may not be relevant to everyone. One of the benefits of Disney's original theme park attractions is that you don't have to already like Haunted Mansion or Jungle Cruise to enjoy them. But what if you actively don't like Jurassic World or the Michael Bay Transformers movies? I mean, to be fair, the more Disney relies on IP, the more they suffer the same problem. I hear that Pandora at Animal Kingdom is great, but I don't care, because I not only don't care about Avatar, but I actively avoid it. Secondly, large parts of Universal lack theming. Now, that is fine to an extent for Universal Hollywood. Looking unromantically like a movie studio is fine if you are a movie studio. And the studio tram tour was the best part of our afternoon in Universal Hollywood. Despite my criticisms, I would consider visiting Universal Hollywood again, just to do the VIP studio tour, where you get to explore the historic sets on foot. Now, neither of these objections are really that relevant to Universal Monsters. I mean, I do care about that franchise, and I expect that it will be well themed, applying the improvements that Universal has been making in theming with Wizarding World of Harry Potter and Super Nintendo Land. But Wizarding World points to the third problem. The true brilliance of Wizarding World is that Universal turned shopping into a themed experience. From the wand selection ceremony to Ollivanders to movie-accurate candy packaging, Universal recognized that fans wanted to roleplay and were willing to buy their way into that world. Had Wizarding World been at Disney, the merchandise would have just been t-shirts of Mickey dressed as Harry Potter. But the shopping had to be good, because it's all there was to do. Either side of Wizarding World was essentially a themed shopping mall with a thrill ride at one end and a tram between them. Virtually all of Universal was this way, just thrill rides and shopping. And that might sound great if you're the sort of person who loves racing from thrill ride to thrill ride, and I suppose that is who Universal's banking on. But if you go to theme parks for the theme, it's exhausting. Heck, I actually love Rocky and Bullwinkle. It's like my second favorite TV show of all time. But I couldn't be bothered to ride the Dudley Do-Right ride, because I was just done with thrill rides. By contrast, Disney has thrill rides, but they also have slow rides, dark rides, boat rides, animatronic shows, live shows, walkthroughs, museum and zoo quality exhibits, characters worth meeting, and interactive games in flawlessly themed environments. One of my favorite things to do at Disney is grab a mint julep and ride the Mark Twain riverboat around the rivers of America for 20 minutes. I've found that what makes Disney so satisfying isn't really the rides as such, Because lots of places have rides. Rather, it's the theming, like the Haunted Mansion or the Jungle Cruise, and all the little experiences, like watching cartoons in Main Street Cinema, enjoying a Dole Whip in the Enchanted Tiki Room, getting a prescription from Shrunken Ned, enjoying a quiet, misty morning on Tom Sawyer Island, and cuddling up to watch Fantasmic. Universal is like if Disneyland only had Splash Mountain, Star Tours, and Space Mountain over and over and over again. It's fun the first couple of times, but it gets pretty old pretty quick. It's salad with only lettuce, mashed potatoes with no skins. My wife and I knocked out both Universal Orlando parks in less than a day, because there were so many rides we just didn't care about, either because we didn't care about or actively disliked the movies they were based on, or we were just done with more thrill rides. Universal is desperately in need of some variety in rides and attractions. The theme park fandom constantly goes on about e-ticket attractions, but A, B, C, and D ticket attractions are every bit as important to add variety and to pace out a day. We even remarked at the time that we enjoyed the queue of Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey more than the ride itself. I would have preferred a slow, omni-mover, Haunted Mansion-style ride through Hogwarts more than we did enjoy some robot arm tossing us from screen to screen. Now, if you're going to pick a franchise that couldn't be more perfectly suited to slow-moving dark rides, you literally could not do better than the slow-moving, atmospheric films of the Universal monsters. Unfortunately, Universal has never understood what to do with them. Now, today we have an embarrassment of riches when it comes to studios that do not understand the appeal of their own products. Star Wars, Star Trek, Lord of the Rings, Marvel, there are no shortage of great franchises being entrusted to writers, directors, and executives who don't understand them, don't like them, and don't like you for liking them. But just as Universal pioneered the cinematic universe with the classic monsters, so too did they pioneer mismanaging them. We can easily point to each successive reboot as an example of how Universe don't know what they have. Tom Cruise's The Mummy and its aborted dark universe, Dracula Untold before it, and Van Helsing before that. All failed because they deeply misjudged the subject, trying to turn these spooky, gothic, and kitschy, cool monsters into action movies. Their mismanagement goes all the way back to the beginning, though. Carl Laemmle Sr. wasn't sold on horror movies from the start. Then they were ready to retire them after 1936, the Hays Code coming into effect, and the bankruptcy of the company. But Universal's new owners resurrected the monsters as B-movie fare. I mean, fun in their own way, and I do love them, but not comparable to the daring originality of films like Dracula, Frankenstein, The Mummy, Bride of Frankenstein, The Black Cat, The Old Dark House, and Murders in the Rue Morgue. What Universal perhaps doesn't understand is that the type of horror represented by the classic monsters doesn't translate easily into modern forms. The classic films are slow, moody, atmospheric, spooky, gothic stories of metaphysical horror. They were stories of temptation, damnation, madness, curses, love denied, the things man was not meant to know, and the battle between good and evil for the human soul. That doesn't automatically translate into action movies or modern horror where the only scary thing is how violent your death might be. On the contrary, the slow, spooky, gothic, metaphysical horror made entire generations fall in love with the monsters. Misunderstood Frankenstein, tormented Larry Talbot, the innocent creature from the Black Lagoon, the dark seductiveness of Dracula. These characters did not emerge as terrifying, scary psycho killers in an age of Freddy's, Jasons, and Xenomorphs. Instead, they became cool. They became cultural icons of cool creepiness. Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Wolfman became the closest things Universal has to Mickey, Donald, and Goofy, or Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. Most of the heavy lifting in keeping Universal monsters iconic has been done by everybody but Universal. After the Monsters franchise ran its course in the 50s, The films were repackaged for TV horror hosts and drive-in theaters, where they reached a whole new generation. Famous monsters of Filmland, Vampira, Rankin Bass, Zachary, Aurora Plastics, and General Mills kept their torch burning, so to speak. Today, there are 4 concurrent Universal Monsters toy lines: NECA, JADA, Reaction, and Bendums. No real thanks to Universal Studios themselves. The best attempt to reboot them hasn't been from Universal, but from the series Penny Dreadful. While still more explicit with sex and gore than many are comfortable with, its writing is still the best available example of how to translate these atmospheric, gothic, metaphysical stories into the modern day. Even Universal's own attempt to cash in on mid-century monster kitsch, The Munsters, was creatively slight in comparison to the originality of the Addams Family. Universal keeps trying, though, off and on, even though they don't get it. We all have dreams of being given unearned authority over entertainment megacorporations. Most want to become Disney Imagineers or the CEO of Lucasfilm. But if I had my pick, it would be as the brand manager for the Universal Monsters franchise. Then at least I could do more than just complain online about what they're doing wrong. Project 902 on permits is rumored to be the land devoted to Universal Monsters. According to most summaries, a portal through an electrical tower, recalling Dr. Frankenstein's lab, will usher guests into the remote European village of Darkmoor. Cast under the perpetual shadow of monster invasion, the village is visibly armed to the teeth, with crossbows, swords, and other implements of defense everywhere at the ready. There are rumored to be 2 dining establishments, one sit-down, one quick service with a possible bar, with the latter themed to an old windmill. Now that is a nice touch. There may also be a meet and greet area with monsters, which is frankly the best sounding part of the land. Then comes the headline attraction. Behind a gothic castle facade is a robotic arm ride Bakuka, in similar style to Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey. The rumored name is Monsters Unchained, the Frankenstein Experiment. Patent images show a seating system resembling steampunk crossed with Hot Topic, and notably absent from any leaked patent documentation is an allowance for the kind of large projection screens used in the Harry Potter ride. So at the very least, this Universal Monsters Dark Ride will lean more heavily on practical effects, which is a good thing. However, it is still a vomit machine with a robot arm swinging you around. The second attraction, replacing a theater in the original layouts, is a Mock Rides spinning roller coaster rumored to be themed to the Wolfman, and dubbed The Curse of the Werewolf. There appears to be a load building, as well as a structure dubbed Scene 2, which may house animatronic elements. Perhaps the Wolfman lashes out at the coaster, or briefly chases it along like a dog after a car. Plans also show an allocation for a future expansion, which theme park fandom rumors, or just wildly hopes, will be a boat attraction based on Creature from the Black Lagoon. Time will tell, as it will tell for all of these rumors. Given the slate of thrill rides, the rumored story setting, and Universal's track record with the monsters, this all seems to tally up to a kind of official counterfeit in the vein of Universal's Halloween Horror Nights. Buzz suggests that Universal isn't tracking to make this as scary as the Halloween Horror Nights haunted houses, but I think it would be foolish not to anticipate that they would apply many of the same aesthetic sensibilities. The Halloween Horror Nights versions of the monsters are trying very hard to make them more extreme, make them all fangs and claws and blood to compete with the extremity of the other haunted houses based on more extreme and gory franchises. They're not the classic monsters, and they're not slow, gothic, metaphysical horrors. I mean, they could surprise me, but Universal typically only surprises me in how I didn't think they could get any worse. But rather than bloviate and kvetch, allow me to offer suggestions for what I would do differently. I'm not mad at Universal for not reading my mind or consulting with me first, but this is the kind of thing that I wish they did move more towards. First of all, we already have a perfectly good name for the village, Visceria. It features in several of the films, will sound original and foreign and exotic to people who don't care, but be a nice nod for those of us who do. No need to make this village extreme. A replica of the classic Universal Studios European village set would actually be quite wonderful. For a headline ride, a House of Dracula, haunted mansion-style dark ride would be equally wonderful. We enter the attraction through a gatehouse, beyond which lies a forest and a spooky castle. Inside, Count Dracula bids us welcome, and beckons us into a carriage that will convey us to his house. The cart leaves the gatehouse to a replica of the forest inside the show building, and past a gypsy cart where Larry Talbot is transforming into the Wolfman, while Maliva recites the famous poem, "Even a man who is pure in heart, and says his prayers by night, can become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms, and the autumn moon is bright." Then the Wolfman snarls, stalks, and chases us through the forest, until we reach the safety of the castle. "Ah, I see you survived the forest. Such creatures of the night, what music they make. Now come, I shall introduce you to the other guests of my house. This is Dr. Griffin, who is conducting experiments to turn himself into an invisible man. Now you see him, now you don't. And here is Dr. Moreau. He is trying to give evolution a helping hand, but I don't think it appreciates it. What could Dr. Jekyll be up to? He is trying to separate the evil part of himself from the good. I wonder which is stronger. I'm sure you know Dr. Frankenstein and his infamous creations. The monster is feeling a bit drained and needs a jolt to feel like his old self again. It's alive! It's alive! The monster lives again! Now that you've seen who lives here, would you like to stay forever? At which point, we try to escape the castle through the forest, while the monster mash of Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, the bride, the Wolfman, Invisible Man, Mr. Hyde, and Dr. Moreau's creations try to catch us. In each of the show scenes, there would be different tricks and things going on. Larry and Dr. Jekyll change before our eyes. When the Invisible Man disappears, things in the room start moving by an invisible hand. Dr. Moreau's surgeries are in shadows, punctuated by tortured streaks, until his beastmen start popping out at us. Frankenstein's lab is a grand showpiece, 2 or more stories tall, Strick-Faden machines popping with electricity and pyrotechnics until an animatronic monster and bride rise from their tables. The next headline should be a Creature from the Black Lagoon boat ride, either in the style of Jungle Cruise or Pirates of the Caribbean. The latter probably offers more versatility, but the former offers the authenticity of real plants. Either way, we're on a cruise to the Black Lagoon, and along the way we see hints and traces of the creature's work. A ruined camp, a rustle in the leaves, a hand reaching out of the water and disappearing. Then we reach the lagoon and find ourselves under attack from a whole school of creatures. Thankfully, we escape the Black Lagoon and make it to the gift shop, which, like the Halloween store at Universal Studios, sells monster and tiki mashup merchandise. A simulator ride could be themed to This Island Earth, Return to Metaluna. We are abducted by the Metalunans to make one last-ditch attempt to save their planet from destruction by their enemies. But oh no! An animatronic mutant has broken loose inside the ship and is threatening the passengers. Speaking of 1950s sci-fi, what about an Incredible Shrinking Man playground area, where kids can scramble around giant household items? If there must be a roller coaster, then let's get diegetic about it. The Franken Coaster, built from the scariest parts of the scariest roller coasters ever to exist. Roller coasters so terrifying they had to be dismantled. Don't attach a silly story over top of a roller coaster, forcing us to ignore the roller coaster itself. Like with the Hagrid ride, where we all just agree to pretend the roller coaster's rails don't exist. This is why Runaway Mine Train is the most popular theme for roller coasters. It explains the tracks. Instead, make the roller coaster itself the story. The roller coaster is a Franken coaster. A stage show would also be nice. How about an Abbott and Costello Meet the Monsters comedy show, performed in a replica of the Paris Opera? That is, reconstructing the sadly destroyed Paris Opera House set that occupied stage 28. Universal decided to demolish the soundstage in 2014, which housed the Paris Opera House used in 1925's Phantom of the Opera. Universal pledged to dismantle and move the set into storage, but undenied rumors have said that the set did not survive dismantling, and Universal unceremoniously scrapped it. So, rebuild it here, complete with a safe mechanism for simulating the chandelier drop at the climax of my Abbott and Costello Meet the Monsters stage show. We could also do a disaster ride of one kind or another here. The obvious choice is a recreation of Kongfrontation, only this time set to 1933 instead of the 1970s or 80s. Though not an official Universal monster, King Kong is a kind of honorary adjunct, and Universal has a long history with him. But, they already have one Kong ride, so if we wanted to go with a homegrown monster, how about a tarantula meets the deadly mantis? We get caught in the middle of a fight between these two titan insects. The point is, there's a lot that Universal could do to provide a diversity of ride and attraction experiences that are true to the classic monsters, instead of just giving us more thrill rides with extreme official counterfeits, modernized for the current year. The harshest thing for me to accept after all this criticism and constructive suggestions is that not only will Universal rightly ignore them, of course they will, I'm just some guy on the internet with unsolicited proposals, but not only that, they will be vindicated in doing so. Epic Universe is going to be a huge success for Universal. It won't crush Disney. Heck, Disney's attendance went up with each new expansion to Wizarding World. But it will bring people to Orlando who might spend an extra day or two at Universal than they did before. And then the theme park vloggers and Orlando tourists will rave about how thrilling the Wolfman roller coaster is and scary the Monster Robot Arm ride is, and it will be a huge success. This is increasingly a huge artistic problem in theme parks. A new ride is popular because it is new, regardless of whether it is good. They slap a character people recognize on it, and everyone claps and says how great it is. The public are terrible judges of artistic success. They know what they like and they know what they don't, but that's it, and that's not as incisive as one might think. They'll enjoy a fun bad ride or a fun good ride with equal enthusiasm. So why make something good? Why strive for artistic success when you can just put in the bare minimum to achieve commercial success? Disney has been learning that, as has Universal, and the public rewards them. Walt Disney, back in the day, knew that the secret to artistic success was giving the public more than the public expected, or even thought to expect. There are millions of tiny details in Disney parks that most people don't notice and would be impossible for any one person to catalog, but they add up to creating a satisfying, convincing, immersive themed world. Today's theme parks have learned that you don't have to do anything more than slap a Spider-Man logo on Fruit Ninja and call it a day. One of the biggest blows to my love for Disney parks was the vandalism of the Tower of Terror to Guardians of the Galaxy. They took a spooky and brilliantly themed and executed ride that centered the guest in the experience, that was perfectly suited to its park, area, and theme, and switched it out for some superhero ride where you don't even get to see the superheroes doing stuff. You're just a spectator to a far more interesting adventure other people are having, and you don't even get to see it. But against my complaints, theme park fandom and John Q. Public replied that Guardians of the Galaxy is better because they recognize the characters and the drops drop betterer. Don't even think about theming in a theme park. Audaciously, I was even told that, dude, it's still the same ride, they just changed the theme. No. Theme is the point in a theme park. Technically, Pirates of the Caribbean and It's a Small World are the same ride, but they are not the same ride. So, Universal Monsterland will be a success. An awful and depressing success. The most awful, depressing part of that success will be that it doesn't even matter that they're ostensibly monster rides. You could slap any IP on a spinning coaster or a robot arm. Hell, you could slap no IP on it, and the masses will still love the adrenaline fix. So I'm not claiming that the land won't be a success among people who couldn't care less about the monsters, and even some who do. What I bemoan is that they could be doing so much better. There was an opportunity here to do right by the monsters by creating a diverse variety of rides that Universal desperately needs. And they have already squandered it, as surely as they've squandered the monsters for decades.